The idea of the pod is it's called Comics Without Tears. And the idea is it's like a comics podcast for people who like don't really read comics. So that's like, I know you and we're like deep in it and we know a lot more than the average like population. But like the average person, just like it can be very intimidating and daunting. Like they don't know, like I would say probably 99% or probably above that of the average population just does not read comics, doesn't know anything about it. So the idea is like sort of just to talk about it in like a casual, approachable way, like, you know what I mean? Not like I don't know, like not deep into the weeds of stuff that like your average guy is just going to be like, very intimidated by, you know what I mean? Because if we start off and we're like, okay, Steranko, like in the 70s, like, the average guy is just going to be like, who, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I'm hoping, to talk about comics in a way that just like, makes it easy and approachable just for like, okay, here's a guy who I've seen all the Marvel movies. Like, so, I'm interested in the comics, like, hit me with it. What should I, what should I get into? Like, what should I read? And sort of that's sort of the idea of the pod is talking about these things in a way that's not like mired in like, I don't want to be like the guy at the comic book store that's like, oh, you haven't read Dark Knight Returns? Oh, well, then it's not even worth talking to you. Like I'm trying to make it sort of like a casual, like whatever, like relaxed environment, I guess.
I get it.
Cool. So that's the idea. Sort of teaching people about comics, like quote unquote, without tears, like without like being super difficult and complicated or whatever.
I was thinking like without tears and crying because comics will break your heart.
Right. Yeah, that too. I mean, there's multiple sort of ways you could interpret the title. I also worry a little bit that people could see that and be like, comics without tears? Well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like
exactly. Well, it's all
the logo. The logo has like a little eyeball with like I'm gonna totally butcher this trying to like describe a visual to you, but it's like has like the Ghostbusters no symbol over like an eyeball that has like a little tear coming out of it. So it's making it explicitly clear that it's not like tears or whatever. But anyway, I'm here with Jason Copland. I'm probably gonna butcher this introduction, but he's artist who's worked in the industry for many years, worked for Marvel, Image, Boom. Correct me if I'm getting anything wrong, but
so far you're right.
He recently released this book called Full Tilt that he's been working on for many years, like upwards of 5 years, and we're going to get into that and talk about that. But it was a very successful on Zoop, which is, if you don't know, is sort of like a Kickstarter competitor. And I don't know, is that sound about right, Jason?
Yeah, pretty much. The only other thing is we did Kill All Monsters.
Yes.
Me and Mike May did Kill All Monsters through Dark Horse.
Sorry, right.
Yeah, no, I just I like to give a shout out because that's another one of those creator owned sort of things that working for Marvel or working for Boom and doing licensed stuff is one thing, but I like to push the stuff that I actually own.
Yeah, definitely. There's this Frank Miller speech that I think it was at I want to say it was at like a retailer summit in the 90s. I always like come back to this speech that he did where he says something to the effect of like, take a chance on the creator owned books because it's like, this is a book you can't be fired from, that it's the book is the person writing it, and and vice versa. Like, it's sort of, I'm butchering I'm butchering this great writer's quote and like mixing it up, but I don't know, like I get where you're coming from. That's like you're more personally invested in something that's like own and is your heart and soul is invested into.
Yeah,
Um,
by far. Like yeah, Full Tilt is me. Whereas, whatever I did
yeah,
at some of these other companies, that was a paycheck.
yeah. I mean, I'm gonna even try to find it as I'm talking to you, because you just said he basically said almost exactly that. Um,
Yeah. Well, because comics is one of those things that there's some people that there's quite a number of people that really want to work for these big companies because they really like the properties, they really like the characters, they like the history, all that sort of stuff. And when I was younger, I believed in that, and I it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. But sometimes when you obtain that goal that you were shooting for, and you realize that uh, there's really nothing to it after you get there,
hmm.
um, and it became pretty obvious once I had kind of done my first little, spot with some of these license stuff that it just wasn't what I wanted to do. And yeah, the creator owned stuff is exactly where I want to be. I don't ever want to work for any of these other companies
Hmm.
ever again. So yeah, so support those creator owned books for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I want to get into that and talk to you more about that, but it's, I have obviously I haven't worked at Marvel or DC or, any or Boom or any of these bigger licensed properties. But I have kind of a similar experience that, like, you grow up and your whole life it's like your dream to write Spider-Man or work on Spider or work on Batman or whatever. And as you become an adult, you kind of realize, like, you know you want to create Spider-Man, and your own thing that you know own, I guess, you like legally own. And and it's got to be tough for, like, you know you look at a guy like, like Ed Brubaker, for instance, and you look at like the Winter Soldier, and it's just got to be tough where, like, you go to like the latest Avengers movie and it's like making $1 billion, and like, the Winter Soldier is basically an invention of like Ed Brubaker, and like the name of the artist who like
Yeah.
created that character with him escapes me at the moment, but like,
I want to say
it's
it was
like,
Epstein, but I don't think it was
yeah,
Epstein. Was it Epstein?
I think it was Steve Epting. I think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
On Yeah, I think it was on their run of Captain America, but it's just got to be tough to be like, all right, they made 1.5 billion dollars, with a B off of this,
Yeah.
and I basically created the Winter Soldier. And you think of guys like, this is a way different, but like, you think of like Steve Ditko, like basically being like a relatively like impoverished like old man, and then like there's like huge Spider-Man billboards outside his apartment. It's
Hmm.
crazy to imagine him like, but he was a different case where, like, he seemingly did not care. Like, he was just, he was, he just cared about, like, I did the work, I signed the contract. He was not one of these guys who, uh, you know, was looking to sue or like get a piece of that or anything, I think. But
Yeah. Yeah. I think the mentality back then was, yeah, you were just happy to get a paycheck. Um, so you just signed whatever. And I guess it's sort of the same today, um, but yeah, I kind of bit some of these people in the ass for sure. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if I
Like
were to
you.
get hired on any of these books tomorrow, it's just like, it's tough to imagine, like, how do you work on, like, let's say you're hired to write the Avengers. How do you do it? Like, how do you do your Avengers masterpiece, knowing that, like, all right, 5 to 10 years from now, this could be the, a big major movie, and then I'm just gonna be like some asshole who just, like, is likely to not get credit, is definitely not going to get like any sort of money from that. So it's like, I think these companies, and I want to say also, I'm like a huge Marvel DC guy, like in terms of like, these characters have like almost like spiritual meaning to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they mean something to me. But like, that having been said, I wonder if these companies struggle with like writers and artists who work there being like, I'm going to hold back a little, I'm going to hold back my best ideas, you know, and, make my own Hellboy or my own, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like hold back, you know, So
Yeah,
Marvel, I wonder if they suffer from like, I don't know, not getting like the pure infusion like maybe they once did.
they might, but there are so many people that want to work there and want to continue to work there, and really the only way for them to do that is to give these companies new stuff. Or to write their Avenger epic and really put their heart and soul into it. Uh, Whether that person's going to get the monetary, windfall from a film or whatever, it kind of goes to the side for a lot of these people because they want to make their mark. They want to have some sort of, legacy, and they're willing to kind of give up whatever control or ownership to those characters. And I know that Marvel does give they give partial ownership when you create stuff, but I think that the way they've got it all set up is that you almost never see any money from it. So um
Right.
so even though the contract might say that they own a chunk, and legally they might, it's still not going to be the windfall that one might hope writing something for Marvel and then them essentially taking that and making a movie out of it. I think those people get left behind, which we've seen a couple times already. But yeah, I don't know. The characters for me, I guess as a kid, characters for me were always, I was never really invested in like the stories. I think it was always the art for me. So
Hmm.
I don't really have a connection to a lot of these characters other than their designs. I think, like the design of Batman, or the visual design of like Daredevil, that sort of thing. Those are the
Hmm.
things that spoke to me. It wasn't really about the characters or the situations or anything like that. So I think once I got there and I realized that once I drew a few of these things, that I was sort of like left me wanting, and I was like, well, I have more fun doing this other stuff, so I'm just going to do this other stuff. But I totally understand people's attachment to these characters. I just don't really have it.
Have you ever seen like Mad Men, TV show?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know that part where like I guess this was probably in the last season where like Don Draper is very tempted by the idea of like working on Coca-Cola. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's how I kind of feel about it a little bit. Like, it's like, I would love to work on Spider-Man because it's like, it's like working on Coca-Cola. It's like you were saying before. It's like get, you get a little piece of that legacy or whatever. Like, it has there's a benefit. I'm kind of agreeing with you that like there's a benefit beyond just like making money, that it's like, um I don't know. There's like a psychic benefit to like you're working on these big ideas or whatever. Like, you're part of that, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It, Having your work essentially forever cemented within that universe, even if it's not popular, it's still there. It was in print. It'll go on into databases. You're there. My
right.
name will be there. I might not have left any sort of mark, but I'm there somewhere. And to me, that's enough, I guess. But that, I think, is a driving force for a lot of people, is for their name to be, you know that's, well, recognized, I guess, is probably the goal. We all have, but at least to be, that you can officially say that I had a part of this character's legacy. And um and i you know that's a 100% valid driving force. I don't poo-poo it or knock at anyone that's doing it. It just, once I got there, I realized that wasn't for me. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I maintain like the real dream is to like create your own, hyper successful thing, of course. Like, that you have, that's part of you or whatever. It's not
yeah, yeah,
not
I
something
think,
that you're just going to be like what a hired gun on or whatever.
yeah, I think and I'm blanking on some examples, but there are people that had that Batman story, or that Superman story that they really wanted to do, and then realized, well, I could just do that story with another character
Right.
I
Yeah.
created,
Yeah.
and I'm still telling the exact same story. Just I've had to change some of the details to it, but the overall thrust of the story is the same. And to me, that just seems more fulfilling to create your own Superman. Not I have no
Not in
attachment
a
to Superman,
derivative sense, but
but yeah, but like like find your own vehicle that is yours to tell the story that you want to tell, and you don't owe it to anybody to like it. No one owns any of that. You own it all. So as much as I think, yeah, go for the Marvel, go for the DC, try to get in there, I also kind of want to just say, have you thought about just doing it on your own? And but that there is that sheen of some of success or whatever, that reaching those Marvel and DC rungs on the ladder really means something to a lot of people. So sometimes you can't talk them out of giving up some of their great ideas, and for them to keep it and do it on their own. They see that this is their big shot. So I don't try to talk anyone out, but I usually do kind of say, well, what happens if you just kept it to yourself and made something that was your own? And the little voice on the shoulder just tempting them maybe not to go and go to the bigger companies. But again, I don't try to push anyone either way. I just make the suggestion and then step out of the way.
yeah, I hear you. I mean, people are gonna do whatever they're gonna do anyway, and there's an element sometimes of like, um, it's like I'm sure Marvel and DC page rates are like very good, and it's like there is an element of like creator owned comics could be tough, even at a company like Image doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get paid. In fact, if your book doesn't make money, you're not gonna get paid, and you're gonna be just out of pocket of the time that you worked on that. And I'm sure there's a lot of books like that where the margins are like incredibly thin, even maybe even into negative, where you're losing money on many of them. So I could
Yeah.
understand just like, I'm not an artist obviously, but just projecting my mind into that, saying like, okay, I'm an artist. Marvel is going to pay me X amount per page. Like you're saying, don't take that and take like a major risk on like creating my own thing, which could end up costing me money. I'm just saying like
Yeah.
I can understand like the allure of it or whatever.
Yeah. I think though, if you can ride both trains at the same time, if you could be doing
You got to do both.
yeah, if you
Like
can do a
don't just
work for
work for Marvel for 30 years and then
yeah, if
never
you can
do.
do a work for hire, and then you can try to parlay any sort of following that you gain from that into a creator owned book, and then
Right.
go back to the work for hire, and just kind of bounce back and forth. I think that's the smart idea, at least starting out. And then once you have a certain amount of people that know your work, and crowdfunding now is sort of the equalizer. I think it
Definitely.
it certainly helps people like myself, um, you know, make a book that maybe some publisher wouldn't have touched, and even if they did touch it, they probably wouldn't have paid me to do it.
Right.
There's a lot of these smaller companies, you know, what we would consider upper tier publishers, um, that don't give you a page rate for something like this. That it's all on the back end.
Right.
So
Like
why not?
basically Image would do that, I think, right? I mean,
Yeah, for sure, 100%. They don't. Well, they do pay some people.
like
Um,
Skybound does.
yeah, but I think even Image Central,
Oh,
if you are of a certain tier,
Caliber.
if you're bringing a certain something in terms of an audience, I think you actually can negotiate payment, a page payment, but it's rare, and you have to have quite a name. But I have heard uh, the Image give money to people to make their comics. It's not a lot, definitely. If I went to them with an idea, they wouldn't be paying me. I'd have to be a much bigger name. But that said, yeah, Image books, you make all your money on your first two, uh, like issue 1 and issue 2. That's where you make all your money, and then you see the sales disappear, and then yeah, then you're kind of in negative by the time you hit like 5 or 6. Um, so if you have a good idea and you can get it done in like 5 issues, you'll come out ahead, generally speaking. But yeah, they won't be paying you till like 90 days after that first issue. All those sales come back to them. So it you could be broke for quite a while doing that. But I was broke doing this too. So
I'm sorry, I just realized I don't know what happened. Somehow it went mute on my microphone. Did you hear any of what I just said?
no, not at
Or,
all.
okay, sorry. I was just saying, I just went on this whole passionate rant, just like, and I'm looking at you and you're just like looking at me like, I'm like, did you hear me? Like, you're leaving me hanging here. But I just said, you know, I just said you touched on crowdfunding. Um, Now I'm paranoid. I'm like looking at my microphone to make sure. But you touched on crowdfunding. I just said basically how, your full tilt campaign on Zoop, it had like 590 supporters, but it raised like a little bit over $46,000. And just what I was saying is, in the direct market, which for non-comic book readers just means comic book stores, like if you had 590 readers in the direct market, like you would be fucked. That would mean like you'd be canceled. The book would be canceled, and probably the editor who greenlit it would like maybe be fired. Like, it would be a catastrophic failure. But like for crowdfunding, that's a huge success. And it's like, for an individual, that is a huge success, but it's like $46,000 might be a drop in the bucket to like Marvel or DC, but like on the individual level, even though of course you're not just pocketing $46,000, like there's expenses, like Zoop has whatever deal you have worked out with Zoop. Like, of course, it's not just money directly into your pocket. However, it's very likely still more than you would make like through Image, unless your
Oh,
book was like the next Walking Dead or whatever, then okay, you'll make more, but that's
yeah,
obviously the very rare occurrence.
yeah. I, I it really, yeah. Image is very. You could make a lot of money on that first issue if there's a buzz and retailers decide to take a chance. You can actually make quite a bit of money, especially if it goes if they do a second printing. Um, yeah, it's like all gravy once you pay off the basic fee for Image. I can't remember what it is, but it was like at the time it was maybe like $3,000. So that's all of the
Hmm.
editorially stuff, all the design stuff, and then the printing of stuff and the sending out of stuff, the shipping. I think once you've paid that off, everything else after that is gravy. Like it's all yours. Um, so if you get orders for some of these books, they some of these Image books, number ones, they can get numbers for like 30-40,000 copies. um these people are the people that like the creators of these books are are actually raking in quite a bit of money. um
Oh, you're defeating my argument here for
well
crowdfunding, but
the thing is though, it's lightning in a bottle. It doesn't happen for every title, and like I was saying, that once you get a far enough in on your run, you start not making money at all. So, but you're still creating the book. So essentially, if you don't make a ton of cash off the first 2 issues, the rest of the stuff that you're doing for free. You're not going to get
hmm.
paid for it
Or
because,
negative.
yeah, well, Image doesn't charge you.
No, I just mean in terms of like your time and
Oh,
like your
yeah,
resources devoted to doing it. Like if you're not making income from doing
yeah,
it, then you're essentially spending money.
yeah, yeah. So not to defeat your point, but because I'm all about crowdfunding myself. um but there are you do have the opportunity at Image to make quite a bit of money, but again, that is if there's a buzz and retailers decide to go order heavy on it, and then and it takes off for a certain amount of, because these books that, even though they get like high 30,000 numbers on the first one, those numbers for the second issue, they technically,
Right.
or not technically, but historically, they drop by about 50%.
Right. If you're lucky, like it could be worse than that.
Exactly. So if you don't make your money on the first issue, and usually on the second issue, that's sort of it. And if you're in for like a 12 issue run or something, and you're not making money on the third issue, well, you're not going to make money on the fourth or the fifth or the sixth or the seventh, unless there's some weird pickup. Even Walking Dead was like that, right? Like they were close to cancellation, and then just they managed to keep it going, and then all of a sudden it was huge. So it's one of those, like, you just have to be there. You just have to, the right time, right property, lots of luck. And that can be said for anything, especially crowdfunding. I'm very grateful for the 590 people that showed up for my crowdfunder, because without them, there is no book. So my hat is off to each and every one that supported me, either even just not necessarily backing it. There's all these people that supported me through social media and stuff for years, promoting, helping me promote, and just sheer number of just, this looks awesome, can't wait to see it. Like, that keeps you going, because I was literally working on this book for like 6 years. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, full tilt. I just want to pat myself in the back and say I had 100% confidence. Like, I knew it was going to be a big crowdfunding hit. I was like,
yeah,
calling the home run way
I think you
before.
messaged me and said, "Oh, you're gonna do so well," and I was like, "Dude, I'll be lucky if I make my 10,000 by like the last minute of
No,
30 days."
Given the opportunity, I literally would have bet like a large amount of money that it was going to be successful. Like, I was absolutely sure, and then it was, and I was not surprised at all. It was just completely the outcome I was expecting. That having been said, there are other campaigns where I also felt the same way and was wrong, but I'm
Yeah.
going to selectively only tell the listeners about the ones I was right about, so that it'll appear as if I'm always right from their perspective. But
Yeah.
just
Yeah, it's
talking about
again.
Full Tilt, though,
Oh,
that was a very interesting. You have a very interesting history with that you were like working on it, seemingly in isolation, like for like 5 years, and you're posting it online, and the images you're posting, are these incredible drawings where, like, you know, I hope you'll like forgive the comparison, but to my eye, like, I get like a big time like Frank Miller like it's like I'm seeing, yeah, like I'm, that doesn't surprise me. Like, I'm seeing like a big, and you even pitch it as like Sin City meets Godfather in like a Blade Runner setting, like in a
yeah.
Blade Runner or cyberpunk world.
Yeah,
Um,
essentially.
yeah, I mean, you're posting for, like you said, literally for years. You're like posting these images, and I'm sure you got a lot of people being like, when can I buy this? Like, where can I buy this? And
Hmm.
it's just interesting. Like, maybe you could talk a little bit about that it's like you had like a whole long journey of just like creating this book, you know, and I'm trying to see it from your perspective. It must have just been like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, maybe a company will want to do it, like maybe not, but I'm like doing it my way. And,
Yeah. Yeah. This book was always going to be self-published.
okay.
I never once pitched it to anybody.
You were never thinking like, I'll
No.
have like a 500-page product, and like maybe
Well,
Dark Horse will just want to do it, like, or maybe not, or, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
were just accepting, like, I'm doing it, I'm publishing it. Like, that was the
Yeah.
attitude the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Right from the get-go, it was always going to be a self-published crowdfunded thing. It was never supposed to be 300 pages though. Um, when I started writing it, I had a basic outline, and it was about 120 pages. I figured it was about
Which is still
120.
massive.
Well, that's like a 7 issue sort of thing, or 6 issue sort of thing. So I didn't
All
feel
right,
like
fair
it
enough.
was like a super reaching. It was like, yeah, okay, because I wanted it was never going to be serialized. It wasn't written in like in a monthly issue format. It was just going
Right.
to be one book. Um, and so I didn't have to worry about pacing in terms of, having a cliffhanger every 22 pages or
Hmm.
whatever. I just got to write it how I wanted to write it. And then that is part of the beauty and or the tragedy of all, because I had no publisher telling me it had to be this or had to be that, and I didn't bring an editor until I had finished essentially the book and then wanted to make sure it was good. I had free reign to continue to add stuff and
Hmm.
add stuff I did. The book just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and every time someone says, so how big is it, I seem to add like another 20 pages to my answer. Um, so yeah, at a certain point, it hit over 300 pages, which is insane when you think about the fact that no one was paying me, or no one was paying me for any of this stuff. So it's all just it was all just kind of a hope and a wish and a prayer that I would find enough peeps out there on the old interwebs to back this thing and make it real. And it it was scary, and I got lost a number of times during this thing, thinking that I had just probably destroyed whatever career I had going, because I kind of stopped. Well, I didn't kind of. I stopped taking work for hire stuff to work on Full Tilt, and so I was turning down all sorts of things at the beginning. And then the more I talked about online about how this was what I was going to do, I think a lot of publishers kind of like twigged in, oh, he's not interested in working for us, so we just won't bother him anymore. So there was a point where the offers kind of stopped. But at the beginning, I could have just kept putting Full Tilt off and doing these other things that I wasn't passionate about. But again, money, and maybe a chance to make a mark with the character or whatever. But I was like, you know what, it's now or never. And so I decided just to go full in on my
Full
own.
tilt.
Yeah, well, and yeah, so it was just me in my studio, because I'm writing and drawing it. um I had no one to really bounce ideas off of, or other than my wife. I didn't really have a whole lot of interaction with people during this time, other than online, just other stuff. But the creation of the book was pretty solitary. And so I was freaking out. 5 years of not really networking and not really putting myself out there and hoping that people were seeing my posts and would show up for the crowdfunder. It was freaky stuff. um but
No,
at
I
the
mean,
same time,
I really respect that you're, being like pretty open and vulnerable about that. That's like, it's scary. Like you're like, it's scary. You're like, you're working on this book.
yeah,
It's not like, we could look back on it now and, chuckle and be like, oh, it was a success on Zoop. And, but it's like, I'm sure it was like not clear at all, like 2.5 years in, that it was like, and 2.5 years ago, or, let's say pre-pandemic, like 3 years ago, crowdfunding really took off in that
yeah,
time. And,
yeah,
I'm sure some of it caused by like the pandemic, like people being at home, some of it just caused by that it was just inevitable that it was going to accelerate in popularity and success anyway. But I'm just saying, like, you know, I have like a pretty big level of respect for you saying like that. It's like, it's scary. Like it's not all like fun and games. Like it's serious stuff that could be frightening or whatever. It's like you don't know
yeah,
what the outcome is going to be.
yeah. Well, I feel that, like, I'm pretty honest about everything. I don't usually pull punches on a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm nice. I'd never say bad things about things that I look at. Um but I don't want to be the person that talks somebody into you know buying into this fully and not making sure that they understand that there are risks and
Definitely.
there can be setbacks and that sort of thing. I wouldn't want to be that person that, well, Jason told me that this was going to be so much, like it was going to be so easy, and I was going to, like, I don't want to be that. So I'm full up. This is like, yo, it's I'm actually in the middle of putting the book together. I'm dealing with all the pre-press and the interior designs and dealing with Zoop and getting the printer and getting all the files, and it's a lot of work. It's not just you
Yeah,
finish,
definitely.
you don't just
Yeah, I
finish
mean,
drawing and then go, oh, okay, my book's done. It's like there's so much more work to do.
yeah, I
um
mean, in defense of like these big publishers who, maybe you could say we've been giving a little bit of a hard time, like in their defense, like, they're editing it, they're doing like the design of the cover, like they're doing the actual physical product, like, there's a lot that goes into it beyond just like write and draw a comic book. Like, so, there is like a real service that like publishers provide. Like it's not,
yeah, they definitely, yeah, because I mean, I used to just hand over files to my editor,
yeah, and then no,
and
now you're done.
and then
Like,
it would, yeah, boom, it was gone, and I would be on to the next thing.
right.
It's not like that when you're doing your own stuff, that's for sure. um
But
yeah,
also on the other hand, you now have total control. Like now, an editor might change something that maybe, okay, maybe you didn't necessarily agree with, but like, you're sort of in the editor's hands, where like, it's his prerogative to change it, how he's going to change it. And perhaps he
yeah,
has marching orders from even higher above him, from a higher editor in the hierarchy. But like, you know, you now can be like, I want the logo to look like this. Like, I don't have to talk to marketing. Like, like, so there is that benefit that like you have total uh tyrannical control,
yeah.
which is what I've always been after. No, I'm kidding.
Well, again, that's a double-edged sword too, right? At least if it
And
looked,
all mistakes are
yeah,
your fault as well. Yeah.
exactly. Like if something didn't come off right and you weren't in charge of it, then you don't have to blame yourself, you can blame someone else. But
Right. You could be like,
uh
oh well, that was
yeah,
kind of like
if
that
this
was
book
their decision. Like,
yeah, if this book has a bunch of glaring problems, um either through the editing or the artwork, whatever, even though James Powell is the editor for this, and he went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and we worked out all sorts of things. There's bound to be something that gets through. It's just sort of human nature that we don't always catch all of the problems. But that's not on James at this point. I've been reading the proof of it for a few days now, and I should have been able to catch everything. So anything that is a problem later on in terms of spelling or whatever, that's now on me.
I'm sure there's like a little bit of a thrill there too, though. It's like, it's scary, but also thrilling. It's like, it's like there is no safety net, like it's kind of,
Yeah,
or maybe I'm just a maniac that's the way I feel, but like, I don't know.
it was super scary. The probably the scariest moment of the entire thing was when I handed what I consider the finished script to James for him to go over. So it was all 300 odd pages, all pieced together from all the different pieces of paper and files and Google Docs and everything that I had going. I decided that I had to get it all in one big script because I don't know how to write
Yeah, you
properly.
see that's interesting to me, because it's like your process of writing this and drawing it to me is interesting, because you're not, I'm just a writer. I'm not an artist. Like, if I'm writing a script, I have a whole process of writing a script and like researching and plotting it and stuff. But like you, I imagine, are just like, I'm drawing these pages and they're sort of emerging from the process of drawing them. And now to have a
Yeah,
script, I imagine you're sort of, it's like the opposite of what I do. Like, you're like reverse engineering it into a
yeah,
script.
yeah.
Would you say that's like kind of accurate, or?
Yes, I went about this 100% the incorrect way. And what
Well, I wouldn't say incorrect,
well,
but
but well, no, but I would, but then I would also have hazard to say that the book turned out wonderfully, and probably because of the way I did it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, not being a writer traditionally as my as my title. Um, this was really my first real kick at the can, and I had no idea what my process would be. So
So did you read it like any? Were you like, okay, I'm gonna read these books about writing, like I'm gonna like,
I
or
I did.
did you?
Yes,
Oh, interesting.
I've got a number of them, whatever it
Like
was called.
what kind of books, just out of curiosity, for like for people who are listening who might want to try their hand at that, like what would you say? Like what helped you or whatever?
Let's see here. I've got a
Robert
couple.
McKee, I'm gonna guess.
I got Save the
Save the
Cat,
Cat. Yeah,
and
that's
I've
a good
got
one.
John York's Into the Woods.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of that, I don't think.
It's yeah, it's it actually helped me way more than Save the Cat. Um,
Save the
but
Cat is a little bit more of like the Hollywood formula, like,
yeah, yeah,
which
you
is
know
not
what?
necessarily bad, but just, some
Yeah,
people might not love that, that it's like they might feel like, okay, well, I'm just doing calculus here. Like,
yeah. Well, I think that yeah, it's a it's kind of a cynical view of how to write something successful. You
right,
know, they've kind of tried to break it down into a formula, and
right,
you know, I this is going to sound kind of pretentious and pompous, but I don't think great art is made through a formula. So um, as long as you use the information that you think is relevant and aren't going by like a roadmap, then these books are valuable. But I wouldn't get caught up into the like the first you do this, then you do that, then you do this, then you do
right.
that.
It's almost like you could say Save the Cat is more of like more of a manual for how to sell a script in Hollywood, because that's
Yeah,
like those are the scripts they see, that's this is what they understand, and so like it's going to help you maybe be a successful screenplay salesman. But I
yeah,
don't know, I have mixed feelings about this kind of topic, because like I'm a big like Joseph Campbell guy, and
oh
he's
yeah,
like the whole, monomyth. He's like the whole mythological structure. And
yeah,
the way I kind of view it is that it's sort of like scales in music, like just because scales exist, it doesn't mean like, okay, if I make a song using these scales, like doesn't necessarily mean, all right, you're just following a formula. There's like infinite variation within those scales, but you wouldn't want to do something that's just totally over the map, all over the map, has no, you know what I mean? Has no, it's just, playing totally random notes that have no, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like, it helps to have, it helps to understand like writing structure and principles. But that having been said, like, there's infinite variation within those principles, within those structures or whatever. Like,
yeah,
um, I
yeah.
don't know.
I think I think I think reading these books was really important for me because um, it got me thinking in terms of structure and plot and that sort of thing. Um, but I think that what I did was I read them and then put them away and I didn't go back to them.
Right. You can't
So
follow it like
yeah,
basically a cookbook. Like,
yeah, it gave me ideas on how to structure or how to play with structure or how to use plot to push stories forward and in interesting ways. But I don't think that I was like, oh, I need to look at this example again. And like I just kind of internalized whatever I read and just kind of went from there. I like these books are essentially brand new. I read them once. I didn't break the spine. They're not dog-eared or anything. Like I read them, put them aside, and then continued writing my own books. So so they're useful, but again, I would never say, live and die by them.
so when you were drawing these pages, did you feel like you had like, okay, I know that the story is going to be, these characters are going to, like, did you know, like, here's the beginning, the middle, and the end. Here's how it's going to end. Like, and you
Uh,
sort of have that rough idea of what the story you're trying to tell. And then, of course, things emerge in the process of doing that. Like a lot of, sounds like literally hundreds of pages emerged in the process of doing that. But like, did you sort of know where it was going and what you wanted to do? Or was it just like, I'm just letting it, I'm just letting it take me where it's going,
Yeah, I had a really vague ending in mind. Um, when I started, I had it all, I had like I had an outline, I had, kind of the skeleton of the story, but it was all still pretty malleable. So as I started writing and drawing, which I did for a while, and then realized I really needed to stop drawing and just write.
Hmm.
Um,
So you did kind of like just
yeah, oh yeah,
actually
I
just
did.
write for, oh, okay.
I definitely did. I probably my mind. I've done tons of interviews on this, and I probably give a different number each time, but I think it was uh about 100. I was about 100 and like 120 pages in or something,
Hmm.
drawing wise, that I realized, oh, I should actually just stop and make sure this story makes sense and get all of these little bits that I had written on different formats all into one script. So I was actually about a third, I was about a third done art wise when I realized that I hadn't actually really made sure that the script was solid, like super solid. I had
So is
the
that like, a real sweat inducing like
oh
moment
I
for you? Is it like,
I without a word of a lie, there were sleepless nights when I realized
wow.
that, when I was like, I've already put all this time and effort into these pages and they could just be worthless because the story might just be the worst. I didn't sleep for a couple nights after I made that
Wow.
realization. And that's when I stopped drawing and I started writing. And I was like, I got to get this all together and make sure it all works. And yeah, and then I took a year off of drawing and I wrote it. And then that's it got bigger. And
Of course, you also had like a massive amount, like I'm sure this helps you like for social media that just like you've got at this point in the process, you've got like 120 pages where like, you could basically post at will, like, you could post, a page every day for like months and months and months. Of course, you didn't do that, but I'm
yeah,
saying you could post as much as you want. And so that helps you with like consistency of posting and, like
yeah,
variety or whatever. And
that was one.
also, sorry,
Oh, it's okay. It's just that was one of the things that I was really careful not to do.
you
Um,
didn't overpost, you're saying.
yeah, I actually, there's so much in this book that no one even knows about. Um,
Interesting.
uh, I have not let, there's, I think, 4 people in this world that have read the script, so they know what the story is.
Hmm.
Um, there are probably 200, at least 200 pages that no one other than like 3 other people have seen. The I was very careful not to overshow and overshare, because I don't want this book to have essentially been already read before they've read it. And
I
so
know
I was,
exactly how you feel like with
yeah,
these
so I was very
comics that I'm
careful not to
making. Like,
give too much because
yeah,
I want people, when they get that book in their hand, I want them to be excited for what is coming because they have no idea.
right. And it's like a
Um,
gift to you that you're like unwrapping, and it's like
yeah,
there's like you're discovering it for the first time. And I get what you're saying. It's a little bit like, I know people who like they won't really watch like movie trailers, for
yeah.
instance, because like I don't
Well,
want to see it. Like,
that's what I was going to bring up, is that the movie trailers,
Interesting.
they give away everything. Why would you want to go see a movie that you already essentially know the plot to?
Right.
I,
You
I,
saw
I
like a 2-minute version of it already.
yeah, I like going into a movie not knowing what I'm going to see. Like the actor, oh, I like that actor. You might know who directed it. Oh, I like that director. You might know a general premise of what the story is about, but I don't want to know specifics. I don't want to know any plot stuff. Like, I want to find that stuff out when I'm sitting there watching it. And that's the same with the books. Like, I don't I don't want to look at all of the pages and read all the pages and then go buy the book, because I've already essentially read it. So that was sort of that was a big goal of mine when I was creating this thing, was to not overshare, to make sure that the people that back this book are getting something that they have no idea what it's about. And I'm excited
So
by that. I
no,
really
I
am.
mean, listen, I'm like, you know, this is one of the crowdfunding comics that like I think is like one of the best ones in like recent memory that I'm like, very excited to get in the mail, especially knowing that it's like 300 pages or around there. Like it's gonna be like really like it's not like gonna be like, okay, 22-page comic book that I now have waited months and months for. It's gonna be like, a massive like tome or whatever. But and
Yeah,
I don't
and
know
that
what
was
you guys have in the works with like the physical product, but I'm imagining it's going to be cool. Like the production quality of it, I'm imagining is going to be like a pleasure to hold or whatever.
well. I hope. Fingers crossed. That's another one of those things where it's kind of out of my hands in terms of how it all gets put. Like we have a printer that we feel is they've done stuff for IDW and stuff. So I,
Okay, interesting.
I feel like it's a that there's a good chance that they're going to put it together nicely. Um, but the book itself, and this is another thing that I wanted to do. I wanted this to be an object. I didn't want this.
Yeah. That's kind of
Yeah.
what
So
I'm
this.
driving at, that it's
Yeah. So
like
this is
it's
oversized. It's
oh,
about
interesting. So it's not going to be like comic book dimensions, it's going to be
no.
larger.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's the absolute size.
Okay.
So the DC absolute, it's like 12 by almost 8. Um,
Okay,
and
interesting.
and it would be
What is a
hardcover.
normal comic book size? Like 9.5 by 11? Is that right?
It's more like a regular comic is 6.678 or something by
Oh
uh
yeah, 6 and 5/8 by 10 and one
10,
quarter.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
10.375 or something.
The
But I
reason
think
I'm
that's
saying this is just for like people who are non-extremely comics people, you know what I
oh
mean?
yeah.
Like so they have an idea.
Yeah, so this is I don't know the percentage, but it's maybe like 10% bigger, something like that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and it's going to be a hardcover. Um so it's a 300, well, the story wise it's 307 pages of story plus some back matter, well, not real back matter, but acknowledgments and dedications and and that sort of thing. So it's about a 320 page hardcover oversized tome.
So
um
when you got to like 120 pages and you start now writing, like I'm just like very fascinated by that because like, you know, when I'm writing a comic book script, it's like a letter to the artist. Like, but
yeah.
for you, like you are the artist, so it's like you're like I imagine there's a shorthand where like you're not communicating with an outside person, you're communicating with yourself. And I imagine there's a shorthand of like um I don't know, you might say like, I want to draw like a big, skyline for this double page spread. And like you have a mental picture of what it's going to look like, the features of that skyline, but you're not necessarily like typing like, okay, then you have this kind of tower and that kind of thing. Like, whereas
Yeah.
I'd be saying like, I might even have like hyperlinks that are like a pictures of buildings to show like I want this kind of thing. But for you, it's like what I'm trying to say is like it's interesting to me, and maybe you could talk a little bit about like the process of just like writing a comic book not meant to be read by a different artist who has to interpret it, but just like it's like a message to yourself. It's like, it's like there's no, at the risk of making myself totally redundant, like there's no middleman, it's
Yeah.
just you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. A lot of this book was actually written in dialogue.
Oh,
I did.
interesting. So you'd be
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
writing what the word balloons are going to say.
Yeah. So essentially what I would kind of know what the scene was, who was in it, and then I just put those characters in the scene and let them write it. And so uh and
Hmm.
this was good because it allowed me to kind of figure out what each character's voice was like, what their attitude was, how they responded to specific people in the story. Because you don't treat your mother the same way you treat your brother. So you get these people in rooms with other people and just they they tell me what they told me what to say. uh and I wrote it down. So yeah, so a lot of it was just dialogue because and it wasn't and it, for a lot of it, for at the beginning, wasn't even broken into pages. What I did was just start writing, and then I would take all of that conversation and I would figure out what it would work, how it would work in terms of uh, panels, and breaking it into panels like, oh, these 3 dialogue balloons will be panel 1. This is a singular dialogue balloon that'll be in panel 2, and then panel 3 will be these 4. And I would break it into panels, and then I would try to group those panels within pages. And it was all very fluid. I moved dialogue around. I got rid of dialogue pretty much right up until the moment that I sent it to James. Once that was all together, all 300 odd pages were together, and I needed to make sure that it was good. And I sent it to James. I was still chopping dialogue and moving dialogue around, so it was a very fluid thing. I didn't feel like any point that the book was like solid in terms of like it. Everything was still malleable. I could move scenes around if I had to, that sort of stuff. But I had to make sure that the story in general had a payoff, and I wasn't wasting my time, and then anyone who bought it, I wasn't wasting their time either. So when that went to James, to go back to what I was saying way back, was that was the scariest moment of the entire thing, was handing that